Please won't you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts together find their way into the heart of God this morning. Amen. This poem is by Mary Oliver of blessed memory. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around her with enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down in the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Beloved, we are not dead yet. Can I get an amen? What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What is it you plan? Work at a desk all day, day in and day out for someone else's profit? Grocery shop between kids' softball tournaments? Fold a never-ending pile of laundry? Pay the bills? Lose weight? Make play dates, school plays, and parties? Go to endless business meetings? Do you know that you are alive based on the lack of available time slots in your Google Calendar, my friends? Jesus didn't call the bored, he calls the busy. Follow me, he says. In his article entitled The Busy Trap in the New York Times, Tim Kreider says that if you live in America in the 21st century, you have probably had to listen to a lot of people tell you how busy they are. It's become the default response when you ask anyone how they're doing. How are you? Busy, right? So busy, crazy busy. It is pretty obviously a boast disguised as a complaint. And the stock response is a kind of congratulations. That's a good problem to have, or better than the opposite. Show of hands. How many of you have asked someone how they are and you have been met with this response? Busy, so busy, crazy busy. Okay. And how many of you have answered someone with that response in the past month? Okay. Oh, Joanne hasn't. Joanne, are you bored? We wear our busy like a badge of honor. Busy means we are important, worth something. If our calendar isn't filled with things to do and places to go and tasks to complete, then we are somehow idle and worthless. Or worse, lazy. Kreider says that busyness serves as a kind of existential reassurance, a hedge against emptiness. Obviously, your life cannot possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if you are so busy, completely booked, in demand every hour of the day. He says, I can't help but wonder whether all this histrionic exhaustion isn't a way of covering up the fact that a lot of what we do doesn't matter. This culture of crazy busy is becoming a little bit, well, crazy. It seems we have taken busy to new extremes. Parents of young children are busy with childcare and working and activities and exercise and grocery shopping and trying to make time for friends and aging parents and family outings. Our children are even busier than we are. Isn't that right? They are busy with school and sports and after-school enrichment activities and dance and scouts and art and music classes and tutors and college prep starting at 5th grade, scheduled into almost every moment of their days. Even Saturday and Sunday is filled with games and classes and lessons. God calls us to keep the Sabbath holy. God created the world, but we laugh at God's laziness and naivete. God clearly never had to get Jesus into college on a soccer scholarship, right? Do you know which generation is most apt to tell you that they are so busy around here? Can you guess? What generation? Nobody's going to throw it out? Yes, the seniors, the boomers. Thank you. I'm glad somebody was brave enough to throw the boomers under the bus. They are the busy. Luckily, it was a boomer, so it's okay if it was a boomer calling another boomer out. Right. Baby boomers, our retired churchgoers, are often the busiest of all of us, right? Serving on boards, running this church and this town, caring for parents and adult children, going back and forth to different coasts to see far-flung family. We barely have time to sit down and eat food together. 20% of all American meals are eaten in cars. Did you know that? 20%. We barely have time to call a friend just to talk or to ride our bikes on the bike path with the kids. We don't even have time to shop anymore, a favorite American pastime. A new survey by CashStar and Harris International came out recently saying that 38 million Americans admit to online shopping on their smartphones while sitting on the toilet. That's a beautiful idea, isn't it? We have made busyness an idol. Being busy keeps us asleep. So no wonder Jesus calls the busy. He has to teach them something about being idle and blessed, how to pay attention, how to pray. You are not dead yet, only sleeping, he says. He calls the fishermen, telling them to drop their nets. He calls the tax collector, telling them to drop their threats. He calls the sinners, telling them to drop their debts. He even invites them to dinner. Follow me, he says. Toss out your calendar, toss out your smartphone, your kids' practices, your meetings and social engagements, and pay attention. What are you going to do with this one wild and precious life? In the story we read today, we find a crowd afraid to hope for what Jesus is capable of. The healing story takes place at a funeral. A leader of the synagogue comes in and kneels before Jesus saying, "My daughter has died." And Jesus heads over to his house and sees that the full-blown funeral rites had begun, flutes and all. And Jesus says to the gathered crowd, "Go away. She is not dead, but sleeping." And their response is what? It's to laugh. It's to laugh. I read a joke once that said, I want a closed casket funeral at the end of the service. The organist should energetically play "Pop Goes the Weasel" over and over again until everyone is staring at my coffin in silent, horrified anticipation. Imagine if some guy ran into a funeral you were attending in the middle of the eulogy and said, "Everyone leave! She's not dead, she's sleeping." Dun, 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 dun. If that happened, you might respond with pity or disgust, figuring that that poor soul had lost his mind. You wouldn't dare to hope that it was true, would you? And if you did, even for a moment, you might quickly cover over that emotion with embarrassed laughter, right? How could I think that? Your laughter might be an attempt to signal to the others that you know the ludicrous impossibility that the dead can't rise. Jesus knew something that the crowd didn't, and they were too scared or sad or cynical or traumatized to believe him. But when the crowd went outside, Jesus took the girl's hand and she got up. She was not dead yet. She rose up. She was not dead yet. There is a familiarity to these healing narratives. We know Jesus heals through touch and that faith can make us well, not because faith has magical curative powers, but because faith gives us strength to endure hardship. This narrative from the Gospel of Matthew also has some distinctive features. This is the only Matthean account of a person being revived from the dead. In this text, Jesus has the power to heal from illness and also has the power to overcome death itself. A second way this story is unique is in the way that it weaves together two stories of healing. Did you notice that? The revival of the girl and the healing of the bleeding woman, or the hemorrhaging woman. The characters of the story are quite different. One is a powerful man who can interrupt Jesus' dinner to make a request for help, a man that Jesus then follows to his home. And the other is a woman on the outside who merely reaches for Jesus' cloak as he passes by. "Take heart, daughter," he speaks to her. He touches her. He heals her. "Your faith has made you well." She holds on to the tiniest bit of cloth attached to God, and that is enough to heal. The story about resurrection is interrupted by and interpreted through the story of being saved. Walter Wilson, in his book Healing in the Gospel of Matthew, pays particular attention to the words rise and save in this passage. He writes about how these words and actions connect the stories of the daughter and the woman to the salvific story of Jesus' death and resurrection. Images of death and destruction do not have the last word, but give way to new life. Jesus says, death is not the end of this story. You are not dead yet. Death is not the end of our story either. The idea that we could come back to life better than before, that we could find some way to bring life back into what feels dead, may seem preposterous to some of us at this point, laughable even. But like Jesus, we need not be deterred. We can enter the house of sorrow and dare to proclaim that hope still exists. Get up. We are not dead, only sleeping. Prolonged times of difficulty can impede our ability to stay creative in this way. The picture of our lives is dulled and hope for a brighter future can fade. We need a touch of inspiration to awaken us from our sleep. We need to seek out the divine healer, reaching out to touch the power of love that we know can restore our intellect and our imagination. We emerge ready to re-engage with the world, ready to kneel down in the grass, ready to learn how to be idle and blessed. Tell me, what else should we do? Everything dies at last, and too soon. And beloved, we are not dead yet. There's still time. There's still time left to rest, to play, to pray, to laugh, to dance, and to sing. Tell me, beloved, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? Amen.